for later uses as well. The last time we did this one, it was one of the most popular ones we did, and we actually had quite a few community and faculty folks across the state wanting to use this information. So we knew it was not only relevant, but it was necessary for a lot of folks to hear. So we decided to bring Brian back for a second go around and make sure he's recorded and get everything set. So like I said, I'm Janice Onitson. I'm the Director of Academic Initiatives at the Minnesota State IT Center of Excellence. We are one of 8 centers of excellences around the state. We are, I'd say, attached to the system, the Minnesota State System Office. And our role really is to play, our job is to really play a role into bringing things into the classroom, into your faculty, into your students, into the high schools that maybe you couldn't do by yourself. So webinar series are one thing. So you may not be able to have just webinar series in your classes, but if we were able to offer them and have you be able to link to them, that's what we do. We provide other opportunities for faculty. We have faculty trainings. We have student trainings. We have a cybersecurity defense challenge coming up in February. We have a data challenge coming up in April. We do summer boot camps in both data and in cyber. We are also looking for ways to get more GitHub training and agile training, coding training, all of those types of things. So if you don't know a lot about us, please connect with us. We are on, you can www.minstateitcoe.org. I'll put it in the chat, and we can help you get what you need. So that's what we do. So for this grouping here, we decided that because we were no longer able to really do a lot of face-to-face meetings, and we usually are out on the road quite a bit, we thought we'd bring face-to-face to Zoom. And we have the luxury, I guess, of knowing and having some of the wonderful client partners in industry around the Minneapolis area as well as nationally. And Brian's one of them through RedTeam Secure. And RedTeam Secure has been working with us for well over 5 or 6 years, going back through the CCDC competition and doing some work with us, now being part of our academic webinar series. So it is, without further ado, I'm going to give it over to Brian, because what he has to say, the last time he said this, I said it scared the heck out of me, but it was also one of the best informational things to really help me understand what cybersecurity is about and how I can do better off of working from home. So Brian, it is all yours.
All right, thank you. And also, yeah, October here, it is actually National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So this ties perfectly into National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So yeah, my name is Brian. I'll be talking to you today about some cybersecurity guidelines for working remotely. Let's see, where's my, had to find where my clicker was for my next slide. So yeah, I'm a consultant at RedTeam Security. You can find us online at redteamsecure.com. I have 10 plus years working in IT and cybersecurity, very passionate about helping people become more secure, especially trying to help individuals and small companies become secure online and physically, because oftentimes, you know, a lot of the modern products are all sold to giant, huge enterprises, but the majority of Americans still actually work for small, medium businesses. So I have several industry certifications also, certified ethical hacker. So for my day job, I actually spend most of my time in the mindset of a attacker, and I am paid to actually break in to different companies through online vulnerabilities that I identify, and then report the commiserate risk for that vulnerability and what I'm able to find from it. So this talk today is not going to be about how to break in, but how to secure yourself. So we will be going over some cybersecurity risks that you may be facing, especially when you're working remotely. Then after that, we'll be talking about ways to keep yourself secure from those risks. Obviously, this meeting is online, so we're going to go over a overview of remote meeting security. And then I left some time at the end for questions, because this is about the fourth or fifth time that I've given this presentation. And we keep finding new threats and new risks that are out there. And oftentimes, while I give this presentation, there are new risks that people are saying, oh, I faced this issue. And it's not in the news yet, but by sharing that information, even through a questions and answers at the end of this presentation, we can help mitigate more risks and help everyone become more secure. So this was written as kind of an overview for all remote workers. So some of these may apply exactly to you, and you'll say, oh yeah, I face, you know, phishing and viruses and fraud every day. Or depending on your remote work or what you are currently doing, some of it may not directly apply to you, but it's still good to know, and it's still good to know about. So we're going to talk about 4 different risks. These are the 4 that are on the rise because of remote work. Obviously, there's a giant list of cybersecurity risks that I could spend an entire day talking about, but I'm just going to focus on these 4, which is phishing, not catching fish in a river, the other type of phishing, viruses that are on the rise, different types of fraud, and an increase of unique fraud cases that are coming up specifically around COVID-19 related incidents, and what is known as Zoom bombing. But it doesn't have to be directly related to Zoom. It can be any online meeting platform. The media ran with the name Zoom bombing, so that's what people kind of know it as now. So to start, we're going to talk about avoiding phishing attacks. So I'm hoping you're familiar with the concept of phishing. And this is something where you'll receive an email saying, oh, click this link right now because there's important information that you need to have. Or it's going to give you some sort of offer that is, you know, click right here to receive, you know, an extra $1,200 for a stimulus check that you have qualified for. And so it's trying to get you to click a link, or really it's take some sort of action that you shouldn't normally be taking. They'll try to make it look convincing, and they'll try to make it look like something that you are essentially slightly familiar with, but maybe slightly differently, a little bit different, but you know, close enough to home that they're not going to set off any alarms in your head so that you'll click a link. So how do we avoid this? Well, first of all, if it's offering you something that seems too good to be true, it probably is. Additionally, a lot of the times they're trying to get you to click a link or download an attachment to essentially, you know, do some sort of action that you wouldn't normally do. If they're trying to get you to click a link and you have you're on your desktop or a laptop, essentially not a mobile device because it's a little bit trickier on a mobile device. If you hover over that link, it will actually show you the full link and actually read the whole thing, because oftentimes they'll misspell it by just, you know, one letter, whatever they're trying to get you to go to. If they're trying to get you to go to a fake Facebook page and capture your credentials, or a fake Gmail, or a fake whatever service you use for email, they'll spell it with just one letter off. Or it'll be like an O, but they'll have a little accent mark or a little squiggly over the top, because that's still a valid URL, and people might not recognize that, oh, that's an O with an accent mark and not just a regular O. So look for misspellings or poor grammar within the email. I know I myself, I sometimes do some misspellings if I'm trying to shoot off 10 emails really fast. So look for things that are commonly spelled correctly, or things that your coworkers may normally capitalize that they aren't capitalizing in this case. That's also a giveaway. One thing that current bad actors are doing is they're trying to also impersonate your coworkers. So there's been a rise of, essentially, they'll go out and they'll look at LinkedIn, they'll look at your connections, and they'll take one of the names of one of your connections, and then they'll register that name at gmail.com, and then try to send you a phishing email to either take an action or download an attachment or click a link and say, oh yeah, I'm so-and-so from this department that we we know each other, but we're working remotely. Please click this link. So be aware that even if it says in the top, if it says their name, double check that it's really their email, because we're seeing an increase in attackers going and checking LinkedIn or other directory services to look for your coworkers and try to pretend to be your coworker. So yeah, additionally, yeah, be skeptical of urgent requests. If if all of a sudden you get a request from your boss that says you must click this or download this now so that we can get this accomplished, this needs to be done now. They'll try to instill a sense of urgency, because if you do have that sense of urgency, essentially it kicks in a sort of fight or flight instinct in you, so that you don't use your critical thinking part of your mind. You just go, oh, sense of urgency, fight or flight, okay, let's go. And then you start clicking, you start taking actions, and then the bad guy essentially gets their objectives completed. So this is kind of more of what we talked about. Watch out for those emails that have unexpected attachments. If someone's emailing you about something and they've never sent you an attachment before, and all of a sudden they're sending you odd attachments, ask them about it. If it's from an unknown sender, obviously be wary. But now we also need to make sure that even if it says their name, that it's actually their true email address. Watch out for any odd links. Additionally, they may be requesting personal PII, which is personal identifiable information. So this is things like street addresses, your name, telephone number. Those may be just the beginning parts of the puzzle that they need to do whatever they're trying to do on some other system's back end to, who knows, reset your password, or look up some other information. They'll enter in your name, address, and phone number, and then that gives them a secondary email address that they may try to send spam or other phishing emails to. So if they're requesting information that you think they should normally have, or they could maybe find out a different way that they normally don't email about, be wary of that. And again, if you're getting the obvious phishing emails of, click this link and you'll instantly be rich, or if there's a prince in another country that needs your help, all you have to do is send them some money. Obviously, those are scams, but we have seen a rise of more sophisticated email scams coming about. So you got to watch out for the more sophisticated ones instead of just the typical prince in another country who is trying to help you get money. And we have other types of fraud that are also on the rise. So one of the big things we say is trust but verify. I'm going to add to that. I'm going to say trust but verify, but still be cautious. I'm going to say that because there is actually a case of, it came from what looked like a legitimate email address. They emailed that email address and said, oh, are you really so-and-so? Because I thought that you were on vacation. That scammer emailed them back and said, oh yeah, I ended my vacation early. You probably didn't know since we're all working remote. It's okay, please complete this transaction for me. So they trusted that person. They verified by following through with another email, but it wasn't the best form of verification. So yeah, trust but verify, but still be cautious, because if you're emailing that person directly, or what you think is that person directly, there could still be a scammer on the other line. So if they're trying to phish you through emails, and you know the individual, or the organization that they're posing as, maybe call up that individual or text that individual or call that organization and say, hey, is this really you? And essentially verify on a different channel than the medium that they communicated to you through. So if someone is also texting you, then maybe shoot them an email and say, hey, is this you texting me? So as part of RedTeam Security, this is actually some of the security testing that we offer. I will, in fact, get on the phone, and I have actually called up individuals in a company posed as either their help desk or another department, and tried to get them to enter the credentials on a fake website that I made and I controlled. And how this person thwarted my attempts to do this is they were about to do it, but they had an internal instant messaging system that their company used, and they actually sent off a little IM to somebody else in that department and said, hey, why are you trying to get me to enter my password on this password reset page? This isn't how we normally do it. And then the person responded, I'm not on the phone with you. That's somebody else. And then they were able to catch me that way. So a good way to kind of stay on top of all these new forms of fraud and scams that are going on is ftc.gov/scams. They kind of have a current list of everything that they are observing. So you can read up there about the 10 latest COVID-19 related scams. There have been a huge onslaught of them related to additional stimulus checks or trying to get people's banking information, essentially saying, hey, if you would like an additional stimulus check, please send us your banking information and we will send you that stimulus check. But essentially every week they're coming up with a new form of this scam. So instead of me telling you all 50 different forms this is taking, I would recommend just going to ftc.gov/scams and kind of seeing what's out there. Another one that you may or may not know about is there's been a large increase in money transfer requests, kind of still related to this whole stimulus check thing. Not everybody is following the news to see that, hey, nothing's happening about that right now. And there's other forms of money request transfer fraud that is going on. I actually just worked with an individual a couple months ago who was getting ready to purchase their first house ever, and they got a message about completing the wire transfer for this. And they go, oh yeah, I'm purchasing a house. It's supposed to be done this week. I got an email about it. I'm gonna follow these instructions and do it. And they did a wire transfer for $83,000 for their dream home that they've been saving up for, I forgot how long, for a very, very long time to finally buy their dream home. They do the wire transfer, they follow up the next day, and the actual party that the real party that it was supposed to go to goes, what are you talking about? We haven't emailed you about a wire transfer. We are actually going to mail you something today. We aren't ready for that. So what essentially happened was this person was posting on Twitter and their Facebook, which was a public profile, that they were getting ready to purchase a house and about a wire transfer. And essentially somebody out there saw this information, figured out who they were going through by looking through their previous social media posts, posed as that intermediary, and got them to do a wire transfer to them instead of the actual party that was supposed to receive the money. So that's just one recent example. The more common one is trying to get people to do wire transfers or money transfers in order to get a stimulus check. Additionally, one that I actually have a lot of fun with, and I really enjoy getting these, are phone scams. I've been getting an increase in calls more about political calls than about phone scams, but these are still out there and they're still going on. So as we are probably aware of, you cannot always trust your caller ID. The phone companies are getting better at this, and you've probably seen at least one call come through that will say spam risk. If you have a landline, it's supposed to also do it on your landline. And if you have a cell phone, either your cell phone or your cell phone carrier is also supposed to help identify that. But I myself, I'm able to still spoof calls. So it's one of those things where even if you think you recognize the number or recognize the area code, you can't always trust it. And you should try to verify. Don't give out any personal identifiable information again over the phone. And one of the big things that they try to do over the phone is, again, instill that sense of urgency. So essentially you go into a small fight or flight mode, and that your critical thinking part of your brain is overwritten by your sense of urgency. So next, after we've talked about those new scams that are kind of, or new forms of risks that are on the rise, I shouldn't say new, they've been around for a while, but this is the increase that we're still seeing. They're just taking newer forms with the pandemic. So now we'll go into a couple different general security tips. So kind of from a high level of what we're going to talk about This is going to keep you safe from a lot of things. So this is going to cover you for the risks that we just talked about, and it's going to cover you for a whole new set of risks that we haven't talked about, but pretty easy to grasp once I tell you the things to do. So yeah, number one, just keep your system up to date. I know it's annoying when you always have those little pop-ups in the corner that say, hey, there's an update, please update, especially when you're in the middle of doing something. But make sure you have it set so that at the end of the day or whenever you're not using your computer, you actually apply those patches, because those include the security patches for your software and your operating system. Yeah, an easy one, don't run programs from unknown sources. So if someone emails you something, make sure it's an actual known good program. Don't enable macros on Office documents. Macros are just little scripts that can actually take remote control of your computer. I love it for my job because it makes my job as a pretend attacker really easy when someone just runs the script for me and it takes over their computer. One of the most, and probably what I'm going to say is currently one of the number one things you should be doing is good password hygiene, which means using a strong password and a password manager. And this last one is important, but it's also the most difficult. And this is kind of the separation of duties on your computer devices, which given the work from home environment I'm going to talk on, but I do understand the difficulty of separating, oh, I need to do home social media browsing on, my phone and my tablet and try to stick to work on a work issued laptop. I do realize not everybody has that luxury. Sometimes if you're working remotely, you just have to deal the cards that you were dealt with whatever devices you have. But I'll give some tips on what to do. So we're going to start with one of the easiest ones, which is system updates. I have up here what you probably are used to seeing if you are running Windows 10 or Mac OS. If you're like me and you also run a Linux system, then you also have your appropriate Linux system update feature. That one is a lot nicer because a lot of the Linux updates, you just click a button, it runs them, and you never have to restart your computer. I would wish so much that Windows and Mac OS would learn from that and also implement the same thing. So you click update, and it only restarts if it's absolutely necessary. Instead, Windows and Mac always seem to want to restart your computer for you. The next one is just antivirus. There's a lot of them out there. And I always say if you ask 10 different IT and security professionals what the best antivirus is, you're probably going to get 10 different answers. So essentially, run the one that's right for you. And that can mean, either a free or cheap one if you just need basic coverage. If your organization provides you access to one or gives you a discount on one, probably use that one. If there is a way that your organization will help you manage it for you, which some organizations do, some don't, depends on your department and how they run things, that will also help out. But there's also 3 keys that you need to have enabled for you to get the biggest bang for your buck on antivirus. First of all, make sure that it's up to date. If it's scanning for viruses that are even 30 days out of date, that's a lifetime in antivirus history. There's an estimated 50,000 new versions of malware that come out every single day. So if you're even a week old, you see the amount of viruses that can currently infect your computer. Make sure that it's actually running once per day so that it does one initial scan of your entire computer so that it does look for the latest and the newest threats. And also there should be a feature on every modern antivirus called real-time or always running protection. And essentially that makes sure that it's checking the things not only stored on your hard drive and on the disk, but in your computer's memory or on your computer's RAM, which sometimes evades antivirus. If anybody wants to talk more about antivirus evasion, it's one of my favorite topics. I did a whole nother webinar that you can watch me avoid multiple different antiviruses with. So it's one of those things that you have to have because it will catch all of the latest stuff, but there's still risks that you will face even with antivirus. All right, and now here gets to what I would say is the number one thing you should try to be implementing and doing, and that is actually using a password manager. The one that I have shown on the screen up top is a screenshot from the program called LastPass. There are several of them. The image on the screen is a little cut off. It's actually, yeah, LastPass, not Saint Pass. Then we have 1Password, Bitwarden, Dashlane. These are a few of them that I tried. There are several of them that are out there. And essentially, this is going to make your life way easier because it's going to take your security to the next level and also make everything that you're doing for logging in easier. So there's actually a comedian out there who does this entire sketch about passwords and how one day they asked us all to make passwords, and so we all chose, you know, our pet's name or our kid's name or our favorite food, and that was our password because that's what they said, a password. And that's all it was one single word. And then they said, oh, hey, well, that's actually not a good idea. Now you need to add a number. And universally, everybody went around and we all put the number 1 at the end of our pet's name or at the end of our kid's name. And then eventually they said, oh, now you need to add a special character. And then somehow, almost everybody throughout the world decided, you know what? The exclamation mark is right above the 1. I'm going to use that exclamation mark. And then later the security people came back and again they said, hey, well, you actually need to make one of those letters capital. You can't just have them all lowercase. And then somehow, universally, we all decided, you know what, that's a good idea. I'm going to make the first letter of my password capital. And so a lot of people have the play on a same single password, which bad guys actually know about. I know about this from my job, and we actually have a password cracking program. And this program is smart enough that it'll take every single word in the English dictionary, and I added in several other dictionaries for other languages. So if you speak Spanish, French, German, and other languages, it adds all those dictionaries. And then it works so fast that it can do around, I don't know, 1 trillion passwords a second. No big deal. And besides that, because it can go through the dictionary in under a second then, is that it's smart enough to capitalize the first letter of every word. It is then smart enough to add a 1 and an exclamation to the end of every word. And now it only takes 2 seconds to go through all these dictionaries. So I beefed up the password rules, and now it'll actually go through and it'll randomly check for where the capital is throughout every single word. It'll randomly add a length of 1s and 2s and everything to the end of it. And so I can essentially check 14 trillion passwords in about a couple minutes still. And usually I can guess most people's passwords. So how do you protect against this? This brings us back to this whole password manager. And this is actually going to generate you well, you tell it the length, and then it will generate this this big old random password for you. And then it will remember it. So all you have to do is remember one master password that I'll tell you how to create. And then once you enter in that master password, the program is smart enough to say, oh, hey, you're currently on savingsbank.com. I will autofill your savings bank password, which is this giant jumble of random stuff with random letters, characters, symbols, that it takes an actual password cracker months to guess instead of minutes. So now, instead of you trying to remember 40 different passwords, you have to remember one long passphrase that will unlock your password manager, and then your password manager autofills all your passwords for you. And you're probably thinking, well, what if I forget my passphrase? You won't be the first person to do that. They do have recovery techniques that if you do forget your passphrase, it will help you recover it. There's just a couple steps that you need to go through to essentially verify you are you. Probably sending you a text message and an email follow-up, and then a password reset function to reset your passphrase. So you're thinking, oh, wow, that is a lot of work. Do I really want to do that? That brings me to the next slide. Do you really need a password manager? Yes. So there's a website out there. So here's the audience participation part. So if you're on your phone, this may be a little bit difficult, but if you're at your computer right now and you are able to, I want you to go to this website, haveibeenpwned.com. And pwned just is the slang word for has my account been taken over. This is actually a trustworthy website that is run by a very well-respected security researcher. And essentially, whenever there has been a data breach or leaked data, they collect the email addresses that were affected by this, and they send out a message, or you won't get a message unless you sign up for the messages, which I recommend you doing. But it'll show you where all of your risk is at. So I will actually show you really quick a demo of this. So for those of you that aren't able to follow along, I will show you anyways. Oh. One moment. My Google Chrome decided it was now time to apply updates, so that is a good thing. That just slightly slows down my demo. So this will be the website that you should see, Have I Been Pwned? And we'll just enter test@email.com. And then this says, uh-oh, this one has been involved in 108 breached websites. This obviously is just a little test account that people often enter in, and 56 pastes. And then you can go down and it will tell you the different breaches that your email address has been involved in. Make sure that you have changed your passwords for all of these websites that it's been involved in. And then a paste is essentially somebody has publicly pasted about this email address somewhere online. So additionally, I would recommend you need to go out there, check your email, and then you can actually sign up for the Notify Me, where you can enter in your email address, and then whenever a new breach happens and your email address is involved with it, you will get a notification to your inbox saying, hey, there's been a new breach. Make sure you update your password. And they actually partnered with a password manager called onepassword.com. So if you choose the password manager 1Password, it will automatically recognize when accounts have been breached or in a data information disclosure, and it will tell you, and it'll also say, and with the click of a button now, it'll change your password for you. You don't even have to think, you just click, all right, my password's changed, I'm good to go. So yeah, not meant to scare everybody, but it's very good for you to sign up for those notifications and just know about the actual risks involved with your email address that is out there. And now we get to kind of the tricky part, which is separate your work from your personal when you can. But I really understand that this is very difficult, especially with work from home, especially when you just need to get the thing done. But this is really a great way that if your personal device gets infected, it doesn't spread and it does not get your work stuff infected. Or if your work does have an infection, it then doesn't spread and it doesn't, take over your Facebook account and then start spamming your Facebook account. It's kind of a good way to control if something bad does happen. I do recognize that it is difficult. And essentially, the higher up you are on your organization's food chain, or the more access you have to potentially sensitive information, the more I recognize or recommend that you do this. So essentially, I kind of recommend that you take an inventory of what you do on a day-to-day basis and say, all right, am I really at risk of if something bad happens to either my work or my personal, that this can have a large adverse effect to multiple people? If so, then try as hard as you can to only do work on your work on a designated work device, and try to do, personal email, personal social media on, a phone or something else. Try to keep it separate. Especially right now, I just got an email notification this morning about a rise in what's called an advanced persistent threat actor that is actually targeting universities, and they just had a 42% rise in their types of phishing and other attacks. So if you do work in education and anything that is research related, there is a very large uptick that is currently happening from Iran targeting universities. And next, this is a very easy but maybe difficult, depending on your situation, fix for people to use. This is multi-factor authentication. This is, ensuring that you get those text messages where you have to enter in a code if you can. It helps verify who you are. It stops account takeovers, which is happening more often in the education sector. So the ways you may be familiar with this are something like the Google Authenticator, or a physical token, or a text message. Services such as Facebook and Twitter offer this. You have to go into your actual account settings and enable it. Depending on what programs and what software you use within your department or your organization, it may need to be set up by your IT department. So that is a question for you to ask for them. Next, we have VPNs, and there's been a lot of, I'm still getting people that are a little confused with the whole work from home issue about what they should doing for VPNs. Essentially, if you have an IT department that provides you a VPN, I would recommend kind of having that on, because usually that gives you, VPN actually stands for Virtual Private Network, and essentially it sets up this tunnel full of encryption around what you're entering in that goes back to your corporate or your work environment, usually for you to access remote resources or just to help be more secure. So the two main reasons that you're going to be doing this is, as I said, accessing work files remotely, or if you're in an unsecure location, such as a coffee shop, or if you're in an airport. Since we're still kind of on lockdown, most people aren't going to coffee shops or airport lounges, which means most of the time you only need to use the VPN during a pandemic while you're accessing sensitive files that are for work at a different location. And earlier I'd mentioned that password managers are free. Well, most of them have a free trial or a free experience. For VPNs, I actually am going to tell you to avoid using free VPNs. The reason for this is because they offer it free and they actually make money on it by snooping on your traffic and then selling that to either advertisers or using it for other nefarious purposes. So if you're not paying for a VPN, or if you're not provided one by an IT department or an IT administrator, I would not go with the free option because the risk is too great. And there are, when I've done Q&A in the past, I've actually had people bring up the fact that there are a couple well-known secure VPN options that you could use if you really need to. I'm still avoiding telling people that because there's still too much confusion, and we actually ran into the issue of, we recommended a well-known free one. That person Googled it, but instead of clicking on the actual company, they clicked on a Google ad instead, and then downloaded the wrong free VPN. And then they came back and said, hey, I downloaded this VPN like you said. And then we go, uh-oh, no, that's not the one we said. Please uninstall that. So yeah, it's just safer to avoid free VPNs altogether. Yeah, and then again, accidental security issues. This one I'll go over pretty fast. Only print if you need to. It's good for the environment, and you just don't want sensitive information sitting around your house or your recycling bin. Again, just take inventory. Are you really printing sensitive information at your house? Yes, be aware of that, take care of it. If not, you're probably fine. The other thing is keep up good security habits. So if you are used to locking your computer in your office or your cubicle or wherever you would work before remote working, keep up that good habit, because essentially my fear is that people that are working from home are going to build up the habit of just leaving their computer open and unlocked all the time because, hey, you're at your house, it's fine. Then everyone's going to finally, eventually, at some point, go back to their office, and they're going to always leave their computer unlocked because you accidentally built the habit of constantly leaving it unlocked. So if in your office you have a keep your laptop locked when you're not in front of it policy, which I do recommend, just try to keep up that habit. Also, there was a case where somebody left their laptop unlocked and someone's teenage child decided it would be funny to go onto their work chat and start posting funny memes, which their boss did not find as hilarious as the teenager did. There's also one other case where a kid found the laptop unlocked and decided, oh, hey, they had a family shared debit card, so each kid had a debit card that the parents would put the money on. They just decided to give himself an extra 50 bucks. So be aware of those type of things. Here's an easy way to also stay secure: backing up all your files. So oftentimes if you're working in some sort of office setting, there would be like a shared computer drive where you could drag and drop your files that may or may not be available to you anymore if you're working remotely, depending on how you're set up to work remotely. So making sure that you're still backing up your files, because you're probably using your computer more often now, or if you're like me, I kind of just, I set up a home desk, I just leave it plugged in and turned on so I can just walk up to it and I'm not shutting it down as much. So there's the risk of hard drive failure. So I need to make sure that I'm backing up all my files. So again, if you have an IT department or an IT administrator that provides you a backup solution, use that. If not, you can use something like the cloud, like Google Drive, Microsoft OneDrive, but enable that multi-factor authentication that we talked about earlier. Additionally, you can use an external hard drive, but then just be aware that under rare circumstances like a home invasion or a fire, not saying that this would ever happen, but if there is another outside threat like that, then those could still be lost or damaged. So yes, you technically backed up, but you still lost all the backups. And then if you have sensitive information, password protected, that can be done in a number of different ways. Here's one example of just, if you have an Excel document filled with, I don't know, grades, sensitive information, payroll information, whatever you're doing, there's a button on Excel that will encrypt it with a password for you. Additionally, if you have a whole ton of files and you don't want to do this, you can right-click all those, or you can select all those files, and then you can right-click it and you can send it to a .zip folder, or you can zip it up, which compresses it, but then you can actually put a password on the zip folder. So if you have 20 files, instead of going in and individually encrypt with password for each of those 20 files, this feature is available on all current versions of Microsoft Office products. If you have older versions, you might not see this also. So you may have to use that zip method that I just mentioned. And then we're going to briefly go over remote meeting security. I'm going to go over this briefly because it seems like people are kind of now all caught up with a lot of this. Since the original big scares kind of already happened, people have been catching on pretty well to what to do. So I'm going to cover this pretty fast. If you do have questions at the end, we can talk about it at the end then. So yeah, I use the word Zoom in here because so many people were just used to hearing the word Zoom. If you don't use Zoom, just replace that word with whatever remote meeting software of your choice you would like. If it's Google Hangouts, WebEx, Ring is another one that I've used recently. So most of them all have these similar settings because they're all running into the same issues. It's not just specific to Zoom, it's about really any remote meeting software. So disable autosave for chats if you can. Disable file transfers, because if somebody bad gets in there, there have been cases of them dropping in malicious documents or other things you just don't want propagating throughout everyone that you have the meeting with. Make sure that only hosts or panel people can share their screen. Make sure that remote control is disabled. And that essentially the host is kind of in control, and make sure that host has some sort of backup person also, so that if it is a very large remote meeting bomb that happens where a bunch of people are swarming in at once, the host has some backup. And then during your meeting, try to have some co-hosts if you can. It'll just help your meeting go a little bit smoother in case the meeting host does have technical issues, which is more likely than getting Zoom bombed at this point. So yeah, assign a co-host and say, hey, if my Wi-Fi drops off, you're now the host. As I've seen right now, everybody has been muted. That's been great. As soon as everybody is present, you can see if you can lock the meeting so that way people can't otherwise join. And then one other thing is that if people are dropping links into the chat, don't click on links from unknown participants. And usually, like when I've done my meetings, I'll say, all right, I'm going to put a link to something like, have I been pwned? I'm going to put this in the chat now. But there have been cases where people will stealthily sit in your meeting and then randomly drop in some links, hoping that people will just click on it. So if you don't recognize the link or someone didn't talk about a link, be a little bit wary of that. And then if you are Zoom bombed or somebody does bomb your meeting, have the host and the co-host try to immediately remove all problematic users, lock down the meeting immediately so nobody else can join. And if you can, double check all those settings to make sure it's locked down. So yeah, actually I would say do the lock the meeting first, which the host and co-host should be able to do, then remove your problem users, and then hopefully you'll get rid of them as fast as possible. We actually did a fake scenario of this just to play it out and see how it would play out. And generally it takes a minute to even recognize that you're getting Zoom bombed, or oftentimes they'll try to be sneaky and they'll all try to slip in. And then once, they get 15 people in, they'll try to Zoom bomb. So also, even if you're not seeing, odd images or people aren't speaking up, but also you have an extra 30, 40, 50 people in your meeting and there weren't supposed to be that many people, start locking down the meeting and have your co-host kind of be like, hey, what's going on? Why are 50, or even if normally you have 15 to 20 people in your meeting or your group setting, and all of a sudden you have extras and you don't recognize names, maybe lock it down and figure out why you have extra people this time. So that way you're not kicking people unnecessarily, but also that is an inclination that something bad's going to happen. And then there's Zoom alternatives that are out there. These all apply. So Skype, Microsoft Teams, GoToMeeting. Jitsi is a very popular one that I actually use now. It's free and open source. So if anybody is trying to figure out a cost-effective, high-quality meeting, Jitsi is a good one for that. So this is a quick summary of everything that we've been talking about, of being aware of the current threats that are on the rise. All those mitigations to help you, with staying up to date, strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, staying vigilant, VPN, backing up. And then quickly, here's some of the Zoom or some of the remote meeting tips that we talked about, is making sure you have the passwords, making sure you're on the latest version of your software, have some co-hosts to help you out, having everybody muted, and lock the meeting once everyone's in there, and then don't click those links. And that should save us a little bit of time for the questions and answers at the end, because I've been learning just as much from the question and answer portion over doing this presentation multiple times. So I'm really excited to see what questions everybody has.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. I've got a couple questions here. We have one for the password manager. Do they store the passwords locally and are they encrypted?
Yes, so that is a great question. So the passwords are actually stored encrypted. Well, it depends on the software. So with LastPass, it's stored encrypted on your device that you're using. So in my case, I have it on both my laptop and my cell phone. And then I actually have it backed up to the cloud through, so it uses an encrypted channel to send encrypted passwords to the cloud to their encrypted servers. So from my perspective, it is stored in the cloud, yes. But I do believe, I've done the checks on it, I do believe that it is currently secure. They had an issue in the past. It wasn't anything too major, so I still use it.
Okay. All right, cool. And Andy has Foxfire, or Firefox, I'm sorry, is storing my passwords for site. Are they safe?
So yeah, that is an interesting question. The reason that I would avoid doing that is it makes it, so one of the main benefits of it is the interoperability of the password manager programs. So my password manager, it works on my laptop, it works on my tablet, it works on my phone. Chrome has that ability, but now you're actually locked into Google Chrome. And Google Chrome, even though I showed you and I use it myself, whenever I'm doing most of my security related tasks, I'm actually using Firefox. And they both have the same feature of storing your passwords. Chrome actually has the downside of when you're browsing the internet, it transmits that data back to Google. Well, it transmits metadata, the data about your data, back to Google, so they can actually customize ads for you based on your browsing history when you use Google Chrome. Firefox is a little bit more secure, but again, you're only locked into just that application. So now let's say your laptop fails and you only stored it on your local Google Chrome or your local Firefox and didn't back it up to the cloud. All your passwords are now gone. Or now let's say you need to go and you need to log into something on your cell phone because you are 500 miles away from your laptop. If you have a password manager, you can now do that, where if you were using the Google Chrome or Firefox, it's much more difficult to do that.
Got it. Great.
Yeah.
Sherry Erickson, what if the password manager gets hacked?
So this is a interesting issue. So a lot of the times there have been like security incidents with some of these password managers. They've never, to my knowledge, I could be wrong though, I'm not aware of them just straight up losing passwords or individual passwords. Oftentimes what happens is if you are the victim of a targeted attack, what they're actually going to do is they're going to send you a phishing email that's going to say, hey, this is LastPass or this is password manager support. We've noticed suspicious activity. Please log in, click this link, and tell us if this is you. And they're actually going to try to phish your password so that they can get control of your password manager. And so this is why I actually use two-factor authentication on mine. So I have to unlock my password manager in the morning. And then also they don't send you emails like that. So the password managers themselves generally aren't going to get hacked because they have too much financial incentive behind it to not get hacked, that they're spending, I don't know, at least 20% of their revenue is probably going back into cybersecurity to keep them secure. And so what the bad guys are doing is instead of targeting the password manager, they're going to target you and pretend to be the password manager. So that's what you need to be aware of.
Okay. How about things like Norton? I know that's what I'm using as well. Norton password manager. And I mean, are there some that that you shouldn't be using, or are there some that are I don't know.
I think that one's fine. So yeah, the biggest thing is basically I look for one that auto generates a secure password for you. So mine generates a secure 15-character password minimum for me. And I also like it that it supports it on all my devices, because at this point I have a phone, a tablet, a laptop, another laptop for work. So I like having one that is supported on all my devices.
Great.
And so that's what I look for in a password manager.
All right. So Tammy asked, returning a computer, how do you know and make sure that that my automatic passwords are gone for the next user?
Oh, so that's a good question. So this is also an issue if you use Chrome or Firefox to store all your passwords. Those are all stored locally, and there are ways to possibly get it back. Where if you use a password manager and when you uninstall the application from that device, it's supposed to be completely wiped off of your computer. And also, yeah, that little feature that pops up that says, oh, would you like me to save your password? Make sure that pop-up is from your password manager and not from your browser. And it should be clear because it should have your password manager's name on it when it pops up.
Got it. All right, a couple more questions from Christy. If you tell your kids, students, one thing about online security, what would you suggest?
Oh, yeah, so, goodness, just one thing. So I'm gonna go, so online in general, kids need to be aware of the psychological effects that modern day social media is unintentionally having on them, and the fact that we're now seeing the negative impacts of all this social media if kids and teens are on it too long. But to just go with security, it is don't give your friends your password because they want to check something or look at something. Um, that is a way that, you know, cyberbullies are picking on kids or picking on them. So I would still go with the whole secure password thing.
Okay,
And
good.
yeah,
And then one more here, suggestions for making a home network secure. Configuring the firewall, or what's your suggestions for a home security network here?
yes. So when securing a home network, you need to take a look at essentially what am I doing on my home network, and because of that, what threats could I possibly face? Um, so it depends also where you live. If you live in a very remote area and your neighbor is a mile, 2 miles away, and nobody can really get that Wi-Fi signal from your house unless they drive up your driveway and sit in your driveway, um, you still need to have good Wi-Fi security. You still need to have good home network security, but maybe not the same level as somebody who lives in a busy downtown or a busy neighborhood where people can sit on the streets outside. The number one threats to home networks is poor Wi-Fi security, and that means either using an old Wi-Fi encryption method. So your wireless router should be configured to use what's called WPA2, which is the current version of wired encryption that is out there that is secure. And it should be using a password that is hopefully at least 15 to 16 characters and is not the default router password. So it will, yeah, so what I recommend is take a look at your wireless router, because that is going to be probably your biggest threat. Making sure that you're doing WPA2 with a very secure password. Making sure that you change the default passwords on your wireless router if it came with one. And then essentially making sure that if there is, that they should all come with a firewall feature. Make sure that it's turned on. Because they should be on by default nowadays, but depending on when you purchased yours, if you purchased yours, 7, 8, 10 years ago, you may think you have it on, and you may in fact have one, but it could just be sitting there and off. Also, firewalls for a home network only offer some security. Um, they're not as important on a home network. You should have it on. Definitely don't turn it off. But the home routers that you get are not the same grade that you get with like an enterprise grade or a commercial firewall that has next generation antivirus filtering that can essentially inspect bit by bit all the traffic that goes in and out of your network and can actually identify from those bit streams actual viruses that are going in and out. Your home router, you're just not going to get that capability for whatever you're paying, $40 to $100, compared to the last one I installed was a $50,000 firewall. So yeah, definitely have it on, but it only does the basics. So have it on, but just recognize that a firewall is not going to save you for a home network.
So it sounds like layers are the best thing.
Yes,
Layers of
yes.
protection.
That is actually a great point. I'm glad you said that, because yeah, we call it defense in depth, and you try to add as many layers as possible so that if they get through one layer, you stop them at the next. Thank you for saying that. That was great.
Excellent. All right. Thank you so much, Brian. Again, this is one of those webinars that it scares me, but it excites me as well, because now I have marching orders of what I need to do again. Having listened to this twice in the past year now, I really should be a little bit better at what I'm doing. I do want to say, just for everyone, thank you again, Brian. Claps all around for you. And we may pull you back in on your other talking points. I think that's a great idea. For everyone else, we do have some additional events that are coming up, including a SAS training. It's a free training for SAS for faculty. If they want to know about the the new product lines that SAS has and how to use them in your courses, please join us at www.mnstateitcoe.org and sign up through our events calendar. With that, I appreciate everybody's volunteering to be part of this and help. And Brian, again, thank you so much. We look forward to our next visit.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care, everybody.